I see students get into a lot of trouble as $100 becomes $1,000, becomes $5,000, and very quickly they're unable to make their minimum payments. Let's talk a little bit about behaviors that'll sink students in their higher education journey. This is almost my 20th year as a professor, one way or another, and at this point, I've taught thousands of you through this journey. So please take some advice and wisdom and take a minute to kind of rethink some choices you may be making or considering to make along the way. When I talk to students, one of the first things that we get into as a behavior that starts to sink people is drinking. We always start casually, we go out, we can get a beer with friends, but binge drinking starts to really pick up in college and in the Greek scene and some of the athletic scene. You do see this start to become problematic for people making the class the next day, getting their assignments done on time. So I think it's important to say if you find yourself drinking 3 or 4 times a week, maybe you need to take a look at that. Is this healthy? Is this okay? Are you in a good spot? Is this the behavior and choices you're making are going to lead to successful college? So I would consider that as really your first barometer. I'm not an arbiter of alcoholism, but I would say if you find yourself drinking 3-4 nights a week and drinking excessively, you're going to sink yourself at college, right? This may be your last semester. So take an evaluation, get some help if you need to. But that's the first thing I see that really starts to sink students as they go through their college journey. The second thing that I think we run into in college starts to get to financial pressure. And that's certainly my area of expertise. But we try to teach that credit cards are used for convenience, not credit, right? We can use a credit card. We get certain consumer protections when we use credit cards you don't get with debit cards. We can use credit cards. There's some rewards aspects of them, although I wouldn't get too carried away with that because you have to spend an awful lot to get there. But credit cards are generally safe and convenient. You can shut them off. You can shut them on if you lose it. But I see students get into a lot of trouble as $100 becomes $1,000, becomes $5,000, and very quickly they are unable to make their minimum payments and they are ashamed and afraid to talk to their parents about it. So that extra pressure financially, coupled with the normal quality of going to college, can sink a lot of students. And so I'd be careful on that front too, right? So we have drinking too much, we've got credit card debt. I know this has become a bit of an issue of mine, but sports betting can really sink you too. I can't tell you the number of students that come up to me in class and wealth management folks too, and they're like, man, I hit X 6 out of 7 on a parlay, 5 out of 6 on a parlay. This is my bracket. What do you think? And they look at it casually as a way to get to know me and connect, and that's fine. But then the students are spending hundreds or thousands of dollars a week on betting in a system that, if they don't have any inside information, certainly isn't going to turn out in their favor. And so they wind up squandering financial aid money, and they wind up, using funds their parents give them for other things for betting. And it's the same as the credit cards. They dig a hole, and then that hole becomes embarrassing. They don't talk to their parents about it. They don't want to get help about it. And so you see students dig holes with sports betting just like you see them dig holes with credit cards. So I'd avoid that as well. And I think lastly, one of the challenges that I see as a professor are students that need a little help with their mental health. College can be a little scary. You're away from your support network sometimes. You're away from your family and your friends and those people that you love and you trust, and it can feel isolating. And if you wind up getting some bad grades, maybe you don't want to be transparent about that. Maybe you feel there'd be these big consequences for your actions, and it can cause an awful lot of stress and strain on a person. And so, to that end, every university that I'm aware of has mental health support and services and counseling and coaching. And I think overcoming the stigma to go can be very hard, right? So if you find yourself down, if you find yourself in a depression cave, do something good for yourself and go get some help. Because I have seen some very bad outcomes in that space, and I've seen some outcomes where people will literally just pick up and leave because they're really struggling. So, when we think about behaviors and actions that can get us in a lot of trouble, drinking too much is certainly one of them. Using our credit card for credit instead of just convenience, sports betting, and if we do have stress, depression, and anxiety, let's get some help before it gets too bad. So those are kind of my 4 tips for you to stay successful and stay afloat. And, watching this video, I just want you to kind of think, like, inventory where you're at. with those areas and say, man, maybe I do need to wave a flag and get a little help.